Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and this one's a great one and an important one. It's with Stan Hayes from Operation BBQ Relief. I talked to him personally one-on-one about 2 years ago. About a year ago, I spoke with him during the pandemic with Todd from Plowboys because of the restaurant relief program, but I haven't spoken to him specifically about Operation BBQ Relief in a couple of years, and it's been 10 years now since they started Operation BBQ Relief, and we talk all about the beginning days because there's some people that probably haven't seen that interview. But most importantly, if you get anything from this interview, if you're at all interested in donating some time or want to help out with Operation BBQ Relief, there's an app, and I'll put a link below. Super easy on the Google Play Store or App Store. Download the app and you can fill out the form, and I think you have to take a photo of your ID, and they do a little background check, and then you're on the list and you'll get push notifications when there's a tornado or a hurricane or a fire or some emergency that they need. And there's also different ways. You don't always have to go to the location. There's things that you could do to work from home to help Operation BBQ Relief. So if there's anything to take away, it's that app. It's very important. You can volunteer on their website, but then you have to scan your ID and email a bunch of different stuff. So it's super easy. They didn't have the app before. And we just talk all about what they're doing and how his life has changed in the 10 years and how he's almost become a meteorologist, and they're forecasting the hurricanes, and then also how they have all these different things positioned across the United States so they could be quick on responding. It's a massive operation. It's an amazing thing that they do. If you've seen it from afar, take a look at their social media feeds and also go to their website. I'll put a link below on that too, because they have a great video kind of highlighting the last 10 years and what Operation BBQ Relief is. If you're watching on the YouTube side, a couple times the video portion lags for like a second or two and then catches up. If you listen to the podcast, it doesn't change at all. But I just want to let you know on the YouTube side. But it's just great to talk to Stan. He's a cool guy. He also talks about blue sky days, and blue sky days are days when they're not helping during a disaster, and all the different programs they're doing with veterans and first responders and families to give people a chance to learn how to grill and how to cook for themselves. It's so many different things. It's not just responding to disasters. So give them a follow, download that app, and thank you, Stan, for taking the time. And the Kevin's Barbecue Joints podcast and YouTube show is brought to you by Flores Tortillas. Check them out at florestortillas.com. Hands down the best tortillas you're ever going to buy. Every Monday at 10 a.m. Texas time, they go on sale. They sell out quickly. Sell them by the dozen. You can ship them anywhere in the United States. As soon as you get them, make sure you put them in your fridge because there's no additive. And as I've noted, they're made with smoked beef tallow. Send them to somebody and make them happy. Send them to yourself. They're so good. They're good with a little butter, but with meat and everything. They're just fantastic. Again, that's florestortillas.com. And we're also brought to you by Centex Smokers out of Luling, Texas. Flores is out of Whitney, Texas. Centex is out of Luling, Texas. Amazing pits. Follow them on Centex_smokers. Michael Johnson's been doing this since he was a kid. Amazing construction, amazing builds. Beautiful, beautiful pits. They're at 12 to 14 months now. They were at 4 to 5 months when we first started this partnership. I'm so proud of Michael. He's doing amazing work. Again, that's Centex_smokers. And I have a website at kevinsbbqjoints.com. Links to the podcast, YouTube stuff, massive lists that I keep creating. I'm working on a really big one right now that I'm posting in a couple of days that I think will be super useful. But at the end, stay safe. And make sure you download that Operation BBQ Relief app. Well, good morning, Stan. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Kevin. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. The last time we spoke was kind of knee deep in the pandemic. Not that we're still in it, but it was with you and Todd, right, from Plowboys?
Yep.
Yeah, that was the restaurant relief program. I wanted to, for people that hadn't, we talked about 3 years ago originally in your kitchen, the early days of this show, and that was early days in general. And I wanted to give people a recap as to what Operation BBQ Relief is, how it started, just quickly.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, it started after the Joplin tornado in 2011. And it really, at that time, the genesis was, myself and other competitive barbecue guys, we got together and said, hey, why don't we go to Joplin and, instead of setting up and competing against each other like we would, let's go set up in a parking lot together and do good. Essentially that was the beginning of it. We put the call out on social media. We got some companies to give us some food donations, and we thought we'd go down there for 3 or 4 days maybe and serve 4,000 or 5,000 meals over the time. And and come home. And what we found was that there was a great need that exists after a disaster, and it was a gap that wasn't being filled at the time. And that gap was what we were uniquely qualified for. Go set up in a parking lot with minimal needs, create a kitchen, and do what we were doing, competing against each other, but rather bringing our resources together and putting it out. Food, comfort food too. Barbecue is that quintessential comfort food.
Without a doubt.
And so with that, that's the way it all started. We had no idea, 10 years later, we'd be, sitting here talking about serving over 9 million meals and doing this across the country.
And congratulations on 10 years. 10 years that's long, a decade of doing this. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, and some days it feels like it's much longer than 10 years.
Yeah, we talked about time is so straight. Yeah. My question is, how did people, like at the beginning, how did people know to come get the food? Or I know it was on social media, but how did the locals, like if there was an earthquake here, how would I know?
So obviously it starts with the social media, but it's grown into partnerships with much larger organizations, the ones that are those sustaining organizations that come to the community for the weeks, months, years, until the community is really back on their feet, and as well as those community groups and church groups. So when we're going somewhere, we put the word out into the community. We get with the local emergency managers. We get with the local, city and county officials, even state officials, letting them know we're coming to the area, what the plan is, where we're looking at. We don't, because we're more of a bulk service, and have been, especially the last, probably 5 or 6 years, where we've really done more bulk and less walk-up service. Partnering with other organizations that are going to have walk-ups is what we try to do.
Gotcha. Okay.
You'll see this next year, though. We've got a plan to have our own, using some of our own trailers and repurposing them during disasters. We're going to have some, 2 to 3, depending on the size of the disaster. We'll have stagnant locations that we'll start publicizing, saying, hey, you need a meal, come here.
Okay.
And we'll use many of our partners out there to do that.
So when you're saying bulk, you're saying like a church will come and pick up 200 meals or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when our bulk meals start at 50,
okay,
as a minimum. We get a lot of smaller nonprofit groups that are out there, whether it's groups like Team Rubicon or Cajun Navy or somebody like that, whose people are out there, and we're in an area where they're not going to go run to the quick shop or to a bodega or a fast food place right now. So they we make sure to take care of those that are also serving the community, those first responders that have come in, as well as the city itself. I mean, what we find during that first 72 hours of chaos, as we call it, is, as we're trying to get our feet underneath us, we start cooking. We don't even know how many to cook for. So, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we may be going, we've got 800 meals sitting here, that haven't gotten out. So then all of a sudden we're loading up Cambros and stuff like that. And we're going to firehouses. We're going to police stations. We're going to, we're looking for the city where they have their emergency operations center, places like that where we
shelters and things.
Need.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And churches generally are sheltering more people than most of the mass shelters are. The mass shelters that like Red Cross may be running has a lot of people in them in one location. But if you take, there's, depending on what part of the country you're in, the churches may actually already have things set up a lot better. So people are much more comfortable to go to their local church because they know that's going to happen.
It's a family.
And last year's an anomaly. I mean, because there wasn't a lot of shelters because of COVID and restrictions and places. So it became even harder. I mean, a lot of people just left the community. I think of Lake Charles last year where we struggled to get volunteers because they weren't there. I mean, when a big disaster like Hurricane Laura happens, you start looking at the community that day 4 or so, people have sort of in that community are looking for how they can give back. And that just didn't happen. We brought in people, I think, from 31 different states to Louisiana to help on that disaster. And we were still we hit a max capacity, and we've never really had to say, hey, we can't do more than this because we just don't have the volunteers. We've always been able to say, hey, we need more volunteers so we can do this. They just didn't come.
So
And
that was due to COVID, right?
it was two things. COVID was part of it, but part of it is that the infrastructure in the community was so badly devastated that people just left. They knew they weren't going to have power for 30 days, 45 days. And so why are you going to stay there if you can go to your relatives or your best friend's house, 5 hours away, 3 hours away, 2 hours away?
Yeah, that's true. I talked to the guys at Paul's Rib Shack in Lake Charles, and I think one of the guys, he went to, his family went to Houston. I think they went there because they had a special needs relative, and so they needed the power, they needed things, and so they left.
Yeah.
And who knows? Yeah, people probably never came back even too.
Oh, we went back, because of the second hurricane. Luckily, after having a brand new, power infrastructure, it was more than prepared for, a second storm coming through, and they didn't really lose power. They didn't have, but a lot of those people, those houses were already damaged and may have just started getting worked on and got damaged again. And so, it's been a nightmare in that community. But I look at that and I tell my team it's an anomaly. Last year was an anomaly in the way we had to act, the way we had to do things. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to take some best practices, actually, from what we learned during this, on how we need to set up, how we need to control flow better, how we need to, have a better overall operational plan.
Yeah, it was good that you had that, because you will learn a lot from it. And like from the early days, it started with 2 people, and there's you have a staff of 22, right? And what, 18,000 volunteers, or am I?
Yeah, it's so yeah, we're up to 18 full-time employees and 25, I think, part-time. 7 more part-time, so total of 25 employees right now. And the volunteer things, like, one of these things, you have people that have signed up and want to volunteer, and then you have those that are active, volunteering, whether it's coming to the warehouse, whether it's, an event, or whether it's a disaster. So, we may have a database of about 18,000. Of that, I would say, less than half of them are actively, looking for opportunities. And probably of that, I would say you've got about 1,500 that I would say, have communicated. And then it goes down to we've got a team of about 200 people that we're going to call upon, because they've been active in the last, 18 months in deployments and have done multiple deployments. We know the people that, we're going to count on. We don't even have to ask them, because they're going to be telling us, hey, yeah, when the app's up, or when you open up, I'll get in there and select my days.
So how does that work? How does the sign up process work? And then how does it, if say I'm in Los Angeles and there's fires here, how do I know?
Yeah. So the best way is the phone, right? Yeah. So we have an app. If you go onto like the App Store for, if you're an Apple person, you would just, you type in OBR volunteer, the app will pop up. You'll go through the whole validation process, which is registering. There's a background check, all of those things that'll go through there. And then you set it up to, receive notifications. Okay. So if we come to LA and we're doing if we're doing a more of a always serving project where we're working with fire or veterans, and we need volunteers, it's going to pop up, in your area, say, hey, they're looking for 12 volunteers. Okay. If there was a disaster, it's going to pop up and say, hey, we're looking for X many volunteers, go. And then you would go in there and you'd click on the event, Los Angeles fires, let's say. And then you would basically say, yes, I could work these 3 days or whatever it is. And then it goes to a review process and say, okay, yeah, so we need Kevin. So then you would receive an email saying, hey, yes, you'll get more information. Very early on, especially, we're very guarded on where we set up because of putting out bulk meals. We don't want the general public just to flood a parking lot trying to come and get meals from us.
And that's what I was wondering how that worked. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we're very guarded. In fact, we've received, negative media attention or social media, never from the media. In fact, usually the media is the one that outs us and tells everybody where
Yeah,
we're
no, I
at.
think I've seen that during the fire. Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
was bringing that up.
But, with that, again, we're using the opportunity to make it a positive and using our own equipment to where we'll take volunteers and we'll set them in that parking lot at, a Lowe's or at a Walmart or somebody, we have a partnership with that has a big enough parking lot that we can create a drive-through type situation where cars can come in. We can get those meals out to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So I was just that from the early days to now to actually having an app and being able to do that, it makes a lot of sense. And I'll put links to the app so people can sign up for I guess it's like Google Play and then the iPhone store. Yeah. And then also I think that's a great thing because people probably don't know. I think a lot of people want to volunteer or want to at least help a little for something and they don't know how.
Oh yeah. I think, the biggest one is when I have friends and everybody, hey, just call me when I was like, dude, let me just tell you, I don't have the time to call you. And I tell my friends all the time that want to do this, hey, just go download this app. Come on. I shouldn't have to tell my friends, and family, hey, I'm not going to call you. I mean, if you think I've got the time to call you, you guys are sadly mistaken. And to think, hey, I'm going to LA, I need to call Kevin. It's just,
it's not
that's
good.
The last thing that I'm thinking about is the people in the area that I can try to find. But that's also where it's been good with on our corporate side of working with a lot of these, sponsors that we have and trying to get their employees, because so many of them have that social good side of the company that they're trying to do, where they're trying to get their, people that may see this, that's a great way to also get your company involved or get your departments involved, because a lot of companies give people time off to go volunteer.
And it's also something, yeah, like you said, that companies want to have that. That's an important component to a company's business, overall business. So how do a company, again, they go to the website, a company goes to your website if they want to either donate or be part of your program, right?
Yeah, so they can go to the website and go through the website and donate. But if they want to be more of a partner, if they want to be more than just a donor, there's links in there. They can go to corporate relations and submit, send an email in, said, hey, we'd like to talk to somebody. Believe it or not, we try to mine as much as we can, but you have one person who really works at new business development and one that's working other relationships. So two people, trying to help drive revenue and the relationships with, the companies out there for, an organization that last year served almost 5 million meals. So it's one of those things where, people think of, oh my God, they got 18 full-time employees. I can't believe that. But, there's no way you do 5 million meals to people in like 12 different states, during a pandemic without having people. I mean, we had to bring some people on in contract to help with just some of the logistics and keeping track of everything.
Especially during the pandemic, the fact that you guys could still do that, the fact that anything actually still operated. I talked to a guy who was a trucker, a long haul trucker during the time, and it was odd because all the truck stops were closed, and so he was eating gas station food for almost a year, and it raised his blood pressure.
Well, that was the sad part, right? Because everybody was asking us, hey, will you set up at truck stops? They don't have any food. But, I can't set up at, 700 truck stops.
No.
I can't even, we looked at strategically placing, in areas that have major, connections, right? Like in the DFW area. But which truck stop do you choose?
Yeah, I know.
You would shut down the fuel side of a truck stop by setting up at a Love's in DFW area. Yeah. Say, hey, we've got food here, and plus we're not a for-profit entity, and the truckers were one of the most vital things. So we would have been giving them away, and when you start giving it away, that makes the line just exponentially that much longer.
And it would also maybe make truckers go out of their way to get. It would cause a chaos that you didn't. Yeah.
And so we tried to work with several groups that came to us that said, hey, we want to go do this. Great. I mean, how can we support you on this? I mean, but it's really hard to sit there and say, yeah, we're gonna go set up at hundreds of truck stops. And that's the tough thing, because I truly think during the pandemic, they were some of the most critical workers besides teachers and nurses, anybody that worked at a hospital or a care center of any kind, truly were the heroes at that point.
And I think, and people often say, like, why did people hoarding toilet paper? Like, do people don't need? Well, people were thinking like all the different all commerce was going to shut down, and it was there was definitely a lot of hiccups, like major hiccups in that. So I think people were hoarding for that purpose. It was a fear that things were going to break down to a point where. But we, as Americans, and as look with what you're doing, we persevere, we get behind things, we actually we volunteer, we do things to help others, it's an amazing thing. And so you've planned out, that this is like hurricane season's, I guess, on the way. So you're going to be, you said that for this next year, or you're coming up, you guys have some plans for how to deal with this?
So, I mean, every year we look back, at the end of the year and say, what could we do better? And we continually try to implement and improve upon processes. It's very hard to improve on something sitting in a parking lot in the middle of the fray. Yeah. So when you do after action reviews and things like that with your team, you look at how you can do things better. And one of them was, what we experienced in Lake Charles, we know isn't going to be the norm, but we have to have some sort of a plan for that. We're doing events around the country and getting our ambassadors and our local area coordinators to try to get out to, barbecue contests again, get out to local events and get people to register as volunteers, and download that app. Show us that you download the app. Here's a coupon to our store, whatever it is, to try to get that so we can have more people in there. Because we know that, social media isn't the way it was, in 2011 when we started, and your friends actually saw the things that you posted on Facebook, that doesn't happen.
And Twitter, you had like 30, 40 people, and we were all communicating like instantly with each other. Yes.
Yeah. You have this, this difference, and so you've got to go direct. You've got to be able to contact people and get your information out there in many different ways. And so that's one of the things that we're doing, is we're trying to build up that, and it's not always, we have some partners out there. We have another nonprofit that supports us with airline flights. So those people that came in from 31 other states, if they weren't close enough, we would fly them in, but to fly them in, they had to, guarantee us so many days. We weren't going to fly somebody in there for 3 days, because you have a day of travel, you're there a day and then you leave. That does us no good. But if you have a day of travel, you can be there for 3 solid days at a minimum, so we would ask for a 5-day minimum commitment, and if so, we would then, book them through this other group that gets us these free, they work with different airlines and they get tickets for just this purpose. Wow. And so we flew a lot of people to Louisiana, a couple people twice.
That's incredible.
And some people just prefer to drive, and that's on them. I can't pay for everybody's fuel that wants to, doesn't want to get on a plane or something like that. But this last year we invested in 2 bunkhouses. We got to a point, you're like, you don't have any hotels. And if we did find hotels, we weren't going to be able to bunk people up. Normally when we have hotel rooms, we got 2 people in a room. You couldn't do that. So now all of a sudden you're double. If you did find rooms, you either have reduced, if let's say you had 5 hotel rooms, you no longer have 10 people in those hotel rooms. Now you got 5 people in that. So your costs. So we found a company that makes these bunkhouses that have individual rooms. They're little pods, if you will. And, bed, little area, little cabinet, air conditioning. So we ended up buying 2 of those. So I think we could sleep like 22 people individually.
So this is like a mobile thing?
Yeah, it's it's like a big 5th wheel, that we pull down there.
That's so smart.
Or we hire a third-party company to pull it for us to get it where we need to go, depending on where it's at, what we need done, and what vehicles are available. Because we only have a couple of vehicles that can truly pull it, this because of the size. But with that, we have on order a shower bathroom trailer that actually it's actually the first one this company's ever made. And because of the pandemic, they can't get parts to finish it. It's been sitting there for 4 months now, just try to get these these last components, but it'll have double stack laundry units in it, so washer dryer in there. It will have
That's
four
smart.
individual showers and four individual bathrooms. So they're all unisex, right? So there is, the growing population at these of volunteers has been the female side coming out, and more stay-at-home moms, more and more business women that are getting involved. The stigma of barbecue being a guy's business and everything. We've been fighting that for since day one. And the more you see female pitmasters out there, the Megan Days of the world, the Danielle Demovskis and everything, the more it helps us in getting women to want to be out there and want to be part of this. So we want to be able to have those accommodations so they feel comfortable on site. But again, we start with those 22 rooms are used our leads, and then they go to those hand chosen, if you will, or volunteers that have shown over the years that we've spent money now on them and training them. We wouldn't have been able to do what we did in Lake Charles if we wouldn't have spent over the last 18 months before Lake Charles a considerable amount of resources in educating those people that came in on how to do things, because every one of those volunteers was like maybe 3 to 4 volunteers that were brand new, because they had gone through the training. They knew what to do. You didn't have to sit there and manage them because they went and did their thing. And that's why we were able to still put out 25, almost 30,000 meals a day with about 40% of the volunteers that we would normally have had to have 2 years ago.
Yeah, this is built. That's an important part of this too, is that people get trained over the years, and then they're able to, and then you could have them micromanage small groups, and that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's so say this hurricane season, you've already got roughly what areas, and you have areas. There'll be places you'll be going back, sadly,
sure,
again, right? So
yeah, so in advance of all of this, we've been working in the state of Florida. We've been working in Louisiana and the state of Texas. 3 of the biggest areas that have been hit over the last 10 years of doing this, right? We already have relationships in those states. We have, we're getting more and more agreements in, working in the off season with those emergency operations folks at the state level and getting into those counties and everything. Because it's really fragmented, unfortunately, out there is you have, federal, state, then you have local, and, local and state sometimes don't work together, and there isn't a synergy on how to make things easier. So we're having to go to all these different levels and make sure, but we also work with several groups that forecast the storms. They're different, weather groups out there, and we have a couple that have been pretty accurate over the last, since 2018, working with them. And in 2018, they predicted both Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Michael to about 100 miles,
that's amazing.
swath, 200-mile swath of where it was going to make landfall, more than 20 days, 3 weeks before it hit. They were giving us information about it. They're giving us, date ranges of, hey, it's going to be 3 to 4 days, before or after this date. And so now you're looking at it, you're going, okay, before, after, holy cow. And what that does is it allows us also to move equipment around. So, in this last year, we've made some additional, changes where we have some warehousing space. One of our supporters has given us down in Dallas. So we have a lot of our freezer storage is in Dallas, and we have some in Louisiana, and then we have our dry goods storage, which is a lot of our number 10 cans of vegetables and stuff like that, and as well as non-perishable goods. We got about 4 or 5 tractor trailer loads sitting in their warehouse in Dallas. Well, it's much easier for me to get a tractor trailer to go pick that stuff up in Dallas because it's such a big trucking hub compared to Kansas City or even Memphis. But as far as our supplies, as far as our resources, our smokers and stuff like that, they're spread right now between Kansas City, Memphis. We have a place to store and pre-stage stuff outside of Atlanta. And then we have a location down in Tampa, Florida, which has been, gives us a much quicker access to Florida. Atlanta seems really close to Florida, and it's closest to the Panhandle. But if you've got to go down to Estero, Florida, or you got to go down to Miami, that's a heck of a haul for us. So, but from Atlanta, we can hit South and North Carolina fairly easily. So we cover a good portion of the coast there, from Georgia to Alabama, even towards Mississippi, and between Memphis and there, we can converge. And so we pre-stage stuff as we go in there. June 1st is known as, the beginning of hurricane season. So it's rare to get a very big, powerful one, but, they're already showing that the Gulf waters up around Florida are way. The forecasts are basically the same thing as last year. They, from just just call it the Texas coastline, through Louisiana and New Orleans into Mississippi, and then from about Alabama over through Florida, up up and towards North Carolina. So you have these two areas that, once again, that you have a very small gap that they show when they show you their maps of about maybe, and again, that's just forecasting, right? So if you're looking from somewhere just east of New Orleans to somewhere just west of Mobile, I mean, that's not far, that's not much of a strip.
No.
Actually very small area. So when we look at that, I mean, not that we're not focused on Mississippi, Alabama, and even into Georgia, because we are, but we just know the three areas right now that we're really focused on. And then we're focused on the Carolinas up to Virginia as well, because we know that those are the areas that we've been, knock on wood right now, whatever is, that the tornado season has been, we've had such ebbs and flows of cool weather coming through that every time things seem to start heating up in the Midwest here, you get a cold front that comes in and quashes it before it can get so hot that cold front collides with it and creates those massive tornadoes like we've seen in prior years.
You become like a meteorologist. Like, it's such a your skill set is, sadly, it's changed a lot in the last.
Look, between that and, I did a thing, with Fox News that they didn't use a ton of it, right at the holiday, but talking about meat prices and talking about charcoal prices and talking about propane prices, families have to, make decisions. I mean, are you going to go spend, $16 to $18 a pound to buy a ribeye, or are you going to go buy that tri-tip or tri-tip steak that's at $8? Are you going to? You have to. I told them. I said, you got to talk to your meat guy. Talk to the meat counter at your grocery store. Tell them what you're looking for and ask them for alternatives. Those guys are really good at directing you. Going, hey, you know what? This is a cut that a lot of people don't know, but you should do that. And it's part of what we've got into, right? Is before this, when we first started hearing, hey, we're going to start seeing meat shortages and everything again coming into this year, we're on with our sponsors that are in the meat business saying, hey, we need to get some more into freezer storage before this really turns south.
For sure.
And to make sure that we can operationalize, because we can't, if we wouldn't have done that before the pandemic, we wouldn't have had supplies going into Lake Charles, going into these things that we had, because the lag time isn't like a week now. Lag time might be 3 weeks before you can get, before they produce enough and pull enough away from their others, to be able to give us or sell us a tractor trailer load.
Yeah, well, especially too now with that cyber attack, there's just a lot of it's.
Oh yeah, I mean that's crazy. Shutting down all the plants because of a cyber attack. Swift, has a lot of damage control, I think, to make there.
It's really an amazing thing. I wanted to touch really quickly too, because when we last talked, it was you and I and Todd from Plowboys, and you guys were talking about, and you guys were setting up restaurant relief, and you said going forward you're going to possibly at least have that as something.
Yeah. So Operation Restaurant Relief, was such a success. About just about 4 million meals done in over 100 days in communities across the country. Through restaurants in those communities. I mean, essentially, we became like the food broker, right? We went out there and used our ability and purchasing power to buy and get stuff distributed to these different locations, and some of them were mega, caterers. Some of them were local, mom and pop type barbecue places. I mean, it wasn't all barbecue. I mean, heck, we had an Italian restaurant going. We had a Mexican restaurant. And it was really about being able to serve the community. And for us, it was like a triple win. It was our own little incentive plan. If you were, we're looking for places that were closed or closing. It gave them some money to pay the light bill that they were going to have to pay anyway. They could keep people employed, which was, there's still a big part of this country of people that didn't want to go home and sit on their couch and collect a check. They wanted to.
Staffing is just outrageous. Yes.
And then it was, a two-sided coin of that restaurant looking like the knight in shining armor to the community while working with a nonprofit that's also part of it, coming together to help that community. So it helps them, it helps us. We could do our mission without putting volunteers in a weird situation that they may feel uncomfortable, or if we could even get them. So for us, it was a win, and it was a win for every one of the restaurants that I've talked to. I haven't heard any negatives from them. I mean, I'm sure there were some negatives. I mean, there's always, with programs like that, but overall. So we've taken that, we've augmented it a little bit, but when you see all of that and what's going on out there, we really look at it and we say, okay, we can operationalize this for the future. We could use this in a disaster situation in Lake Charles next time to be able to sustain longer than a couple of weeks, possibly, to where we could start giving that food to a local restaurant that had the ability to maybe they can serve 1,000 people, maybe they could, and that gives us a lot more flexibility now, especially in communities. It's a long drive out to California, to get equipment out there.
Yeah.
I didn't mention it earlier, but now I have equipment staged in outside of LA and outside of San Francisco.
I can imagine. It makes sense.
I've got smokers in both locations. I've got trailer that'll be going to Northern California. So I have tilt skillets. I have other resources out there, to be able to do it, because it's so hard to move stuff out there. But if we can go in and we can find a couple of local restaurants that are willing to open up, and the need's only going to be 500 to 1,000 a day, it's almost better for me to find a way to get them food that they can put out into the community and partner with them and give them some money for cooking that food than to try to move all my supplies out there. I mean, just to move the command center and the big smoker out there is going to cost me, a round trip $10,000 per unit.
Are they old hickories? Is that?
Yeah. So we've got 5 old hickories on the flatbed of a semi trailer, and so when that rolls out there, I mean, you're talking probably 5,000 each direction to move that out there, and the same and that's the going rate. Obviously, we have two semi trucks now, but we have volunteer drivers right now, right? So you got to have you have to have the CDL drivers to do that. So sometimes you just can't make all that work. So
you and I can't just get into a truck and drive.
Yeah, I don't want to. I
don't want to either. But it's also like, God love them. That's a special person that can do that.
Pick up, pull in a trailer, I have no problem.
Yeah.
Pick up, and going somewhere, no. Not interested in getting in a semi truck and doing that. That's just not, that's not me. And I got better things to do than be on the road, doing that. Now, someday, I'd love to go drive with one of them out there and just, experience it. I think it would be pretty pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Being the guy pulling it, I don't know that I want that responsibility.
No, I don't, I don't think so either. No, I have friends, and it takes a certain person that can back one of those up too. Like you have to have your brain you have to tweak your brain so you understand. Yeah, there's a lot of logistics that go on. So what have we? Because a good thing, a really big takeaway is I want people to download that app, and I want people to also, when they go to the store, I know there's a lot of merch too. Is that something that helps you guys?
The Operation BBQ cookbook that's on there. Each one of them that's ordered through our store, I personally sign.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that's the best one. We just launched the retro shirt, which is a remake of the very first shirt that we did in 2011 when we launched the organization and everything at the American Royal back then. We do have a second cookbook that's coming. Just shot. Ken Goodman shot over 80 different shots in 2 days, which is like 5 times whatever the average.
Yeah.
No, it's like 6.5 times the average guy. I mean, he's a freaking animal. But myself, I've teamed up with Mike Golick Sr. and I are co-authoring this cookbook to benefit Operation BBQ Relief, and that one, if all goes the way as planned, it will be out in time for the holidays this
perfect.
year.
The merchandise does help.
Yep, the merchandise does help. The cookbook's one of the probably, has a little bit more built in because, manufacturer wants us to sell it at manufacturer price, right? Okay. Where, T-shirts and stuff, a lot of that is, it helps us. It helps us in 2 ways. We make some money off of it, but it's also a good advertising piece.
Sure.
The more people that are wearing the shirts out there, the more we're getting for it. So the awareness is also pretty big for us. So if we can make a few bucks off of it and we get more people, hey, that's a cool shirt, it's a profit organization that I support, and it's just another person talking a little bit about who we are.
So what are all the best ways to get a hold of you guys?
Our social media, we have the same handle for all of them. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Facebook page is still the biggest, but Instagram has been trickling up, continually trickling up. It's OPBBQ Relief is the handle. OBR.org is the website. Tons of information on the website. It's in the middle of a revamp, so I'm hoping before the end of the summer we'll have a new, a little bit more intuitive website up. But again, there's a ton of information on the website. You can register if you're somebody that isn't good with your phone and everything. You can register by clicking the volunteer button right there on the home page of the website. You just don't get those push notifications quite the same way because you don't have the app downloaded. And you need
don't you need a picture of your photo ID too? You'd have to email it yourself, or
well, you'd have to upload some stuff. And, so it's everything's just easier on the phone, but I know that there's some people that they don't like doing it that way, and so you can do it the old-fashioned way.
Okay, and there's buttons to donate, and actually the website, I was going to say, the website looks a lot better than it did back in the day, but you're also revamping it, so it's a really good website, but it's actually going to be even better.
Yes.
And then also too, is there anything about Operation BBQ Relief that we haven't touched on that you want people to know about?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that we launched 2 years ago is called our Always Serving Project. And the Always Serving Project is what I call it our blue sky days. This is what we do outside of disasters. Everybody knows us and knows about us, or that knows about us knows that it's from the disaster side more so. But what we do outside of disasters really focuses on first responders and veterans.
Okay.
And we use our passion for barbecue, and we put together a curriculum where it's a 2-day curriculum of grilling and barbecue, and we'll take them through a 2-day basics of grilling and barbecue, sauces, rubs, how to do things, meats, and cooking. To the point of day 2, they end with a competition, and it's been great because when you're in a community and you can put fire against police or different units, active military base, and bring in different units, or you bring in a couple of different veterans groups against each other.
Yeah, that's fun.
It adds that level of competitiveness that they're used to already, and smack talking, if you will, and that's what I mean. It's a lot like a normal barbecue contest when you're smack talking with your neighbors before turn-ins and stuff.
Exactly.
So It does a little bit of that. We've got some more things in the works. We're working on a junior one that would bring in kids, focusing on the inner cities and stuff, helping give, those kids resources to healthy grilling and barbecue, and how what we do on grills and barbecue and smokers can be done on hot plates and in ovens. And, getting them, and those are, where you have the element of trying to bring the family together also. And so mom and dad feel a little bit more comfortable, right? I mean, my kids grew up with this. They were cooking at 5 years old. They were competing at 5, 6 years old in competitions and stuff. And either one of them could go start a fire on a charcoal grill, or run my old hickory out here and do something. And my daughter, I have a picture of her almost a year ago sitting there, Dad, I want to make ribs, sitting there, putting ribs on the old hickory and everything for dinner. And she was 14 at the time. And that's the age group we really want to target, is around that 13 to 17-year-old age group. That in the inner city is a lot of times they are the caregivers for their younger siblings. And so if we can give them some healthy eating alternatives and how to do things, and get them and their parents, a little bit, a little bit more encouraged that, hey, you don't have to yell at them if they're using the gas grill. No one wants anybody to get burned, but I burned myself, and I've used that same cooker for years, and I burned myself on the same place on that same cooker, and it's one of those things. It's not life threatening. You want them to be respectful of things, but to me, you have to, knife skills, charcoal grills, things like that. It's better to teach them how to do it and get them comfortable with it than have them fear it. It's like swimming or something else. It's better to teach them than have them fall in. It's better to teach them how to use a knife than them picking up a knife and not knowing and cutting themselves.
Yeah, and it gives them that skill set for the rest of their life. And it takes away that intimidation, because a lot of times people see someone at a restaurant cooking on grills, or people in they think it's a lot harder than it really is. It's just takes practice in doing it. So that's neat. So how do people find out about that?
So same thing. If those events are out there, the website and the app.
Okay.
So if we've got one of those going on, and we need help. I mean, we just did our 10-year celebration here in Kansas City with a golf tournament, BBQ Academy. So we had about every third hole, we had food on the golf course cooking.
Oh, that's fun.
We had pit masters and celebrity chefs out there cooking and doing this. So when and then back at the clubhouse, we had foursomes where people, I'm not a golfer. I was like, hey, we've got a BBQ Academy going on. You can 5 hours of learning about grilling and barbecue. I mean, we had Ray Lampy, Dr. Barbecue came in as a mentor pit master. We had Mike Ollier from Certified Angus Beef come in, and he was breaking down a primal. He was talking about the meat, and so we brought in experts. We brought in, some of our local pit masters, and we gave every foursome a local, or gave every foursome a mentor pit master to be part of their team.
Oh, that's fun.
And so, I mean, I was worried we weren't going to sell it out, and we actually oversold it. We had eight foursomes just for that, and then we had 29, golfing. So, I mean, it was. But there we had almost 30 volunteers, and we put that out to the local community, trying to get those local volunteers from the community to come out and do that for the day, because we wanted to engage our local volunteers, And so it'd be the same.
Excited too.
Events are starting to come back, as states have started opening up. We're working on one right now for July in West Virginia with the VA. So the VA is trying to work actively to show the VA the programs that we have. And so as a pilot, they want to do 2 of them at one of their large locations in West Virginia. And so we're going to do 2 of them. We're going to do 2 days, and then the day off, we're going to do a cook for about 2,000 veterans. And then we're going to do another 2-day. So we'll do 2 of them at one time. And those are teams of, you do up to 4 people, 5 different teams. So you have 20 people that you go through that class, that 2-day class, and it's a pretty immersed class. And we're also working on, John David Wheeler and I are cooking the Kansas City Q Fest which is one of the Q and the Lou group of contests. It's a new one here coming to Kansas City, Arrowhead's, so we'll be looking for a handful of volunteers. That'll go up on the app here, probably in the next week or so, to fill a half dozen or so slots. We need people to come out, help rub down ribs. We're going to, wow. John David, we're going to do, we're probably going to do a couple thousand slabs of ribs for that weekend, for that Q Fest. So these different kinds of opportunities that local people are like, I can't travel. The last thing is that we have a virtual volunteer team that we put into play during disasters and stuff for those people that can't travel but have time that they can give from home. And we take as much weight off of the ground as we can, whether it's trying to find dumpsters or call the dumpster company and try to get dumped to.
Yeah, that helps out a lot.
And we take and push offsite everything that can be done on a phone. We'll give it to a virtual volunteer.
Well, that's good to know too. So if you want to volunteer but you can't get somewhere, that's another opportunity. Okay, there's a lot of things to mention. Okay, that's important.
Oh yeah, there's so much to mention, and I'm sure I forgot things to mention too.
Well,
but
okay.
Those are the big things. I want people to know that we do a lot more than just sit here preparing for the disasters. During these blue sky days, that we're actively out there giving back to the heroes and communities and our veterans and our first responders, and we really, that first responder group has really actually increased because we've brought in a lot of frontline workers over this last year and included nurses and teachers in that. And we're looking at doing some special things for those groups in the coming year, knowing that we can't just totally say, hey, yeah, nurses and every nurse and every teacher can jump into our classes. But hopefully next month, I think we'll be launching a virtual platform where they can, veterans and first responders can sign up on the platform, prove that they are, a veteran or a first responder, and they'll get access to a library of actual videos.
Perfect.
How-to videos for grilling and cooking, and then we'll do live online classes.
Smart.
And so again, so many things, but I think we all found that this virtual platform that we're on right now has become a medium that will continue and gives the flexibility that we can do this for, veterans. We can do this for wounded warriors. We can do this for this group and give them an opportunity to, learn more and dive into other things. I mean, we could go on for hours about it, but these are some of the things that, are coming. And then I got a couple of things that I can't talk about yet, but when it comes out and when I can talk about it, which could be in the next 60 or 90 days, could be another huge opportunity for people to volunteer, groups to volunteer, and a camp type atmosphere that we may be able to put together. So
that's really neat. That's a good idea too. So, and all those things would be notifications from the app, right?
Yep.
Or if you can you go online? Is there a subscribe thing too to get emails?
Oh yeah. You subscribe for our monthly newsletter.
Okay.
You can subscribe to get the monthly newsletter, which is a recap. The one that just went out this month was basically a May-June combo because we had so much going on.
Yeah.
I mean, not only did we put on our first golf tournament, which was a huge success. We shot 80 some different recipes and everything for a cookbook at the same time, because why not add more to the fire. But again, a few days of extreme stress leads to a lot more freedom.
Yeah. No, that's how I feel with everything I do. Yeah. You got to just push yourself, and then you get there. Well, thank you so much, Stan, for taking the time. Have a good rest of your week, and I'm glad you're doing well. And just thank you for everything you're doing. It's great.
Well, I appreciate it, and appreciate your time today.
All right, thanks so much. Take care, Stan. Bye.
All right, see you.